It's a pretty tough week. I've been getting these visions, these deep visions of like, I think it's just a bunch of random events, things that I'm seeing in like space and the universe. Something going on in the subconscious. I just spoke to my cousin, he's been going through, he's a veteran, with this kind of stuff, so he's been having them since he was, little boy. I'm not going to say, look, it's a normal thing, it's common. It's rare, but it's normal, right? That's what I mean. You get these visions like everything's just, he explained it well. He's like, it's just zooming out, zooming out, zooming out. It's like something is trying to get to the source. And for me lately, honestly, I've been experiencing this like in the last 2 weeks. Right at the point where it feels like I'm getting to the source of something, it's like I'm having these mini blackouts, these mini faints. A few days ago, I had one that was pretty much like a faint. Sorry. I couldn't remember where I was. I couldn't remember where I was at the time it happened, and I researched some symptoms. Heaps of symptoms, minor headaches, minor amnesia as well, after it happens. It's hard to remember what you were doing before. Like these blackouts, these mini blackouts. I could see it happening, and it's like I catch it just as it happens. So by the time I black out, I can instantly snap out of it. I think this happens a lot to younger people, kids, teenagers, before they have a developed consciousness or ego enough where, they can catch it out. But that compensatory aspect of the subconscious, to kind of protect the ego, it's too strong, it's too overwhelming, so the person just faints, they just black out, they just drop on the spot. Whereas now I think, we're a bit older and a bit more calm, a bit more focused, on when it's actually happening. We like to just observe, try and read what it's trying to tell us about ourselves, what's going on in the subconscious. It was a tough week, a lot happened. Anyway, nonetheless, there has been as long as human beings have been conscious, there has been an attack, an assault, a heavy assault on truth. To me, what I'm finding that truth to be is the root cause of all evil and all suffering is the abandonment of our nature, our human nature, which is born from nature itself. The attack is this adversarial part of our own unconscious. It's coming from us. It's coming from our opposites. We see it superficially now in the world as a lack of consciousness, specifically a lack of masculine consciousness. See, my channel was aimed at addressing the issue of masculinity, or the lack of masculinity. So, makes sense, I want to address men. But the assault is on the masculinity itself. It's assault on the consciousness of masculinity as a whole. It's... we grow up as boys being neglected. It's unappreciated in the boys, and it's abused out of the girls in every culture. Soul is the feminine, but the carriers of the feminine consciousness don't have the biological power, the physical strength to change. They do have responsibility, and they do have every single amount of equal responsibility. But the biological men have different roles to play because of their biological aspects. And if that consciousness is abused out or neglected or unappreciated, if that consciousness is uninitiated into the carrier, the human body, whoever's carrying that masculine consciousness, if that's uninitiated, then it's just going to make everything worse, which it has, it has. It's gotten as worse as it could possibly get, It's happening in the Middle East. Especially. The same cause of what's happening in the Middle East. Child sacrifice is linked to the same issue of this, relationship crisis all around the world. Social media and dating, hypergamy, and the same reason you're being ignored, ghosted, This the same reason. Let me try and. This might brutalize you a bit, right? But I don't know what else is going to work at the moment, other than 200-300 hours of content just talking about your shadow. If I can be brutal with you a bit. The same reason you cannot find peace without a woman in your life is the exact same cause of issues that's leading to war in the Middle East, that's leading to generations being wiped out. Generations, family trees being wiped out. Right, even my home country, Lebanon. It's the lack of masculinity. It's the lack of maturity. It's the lack of the mature masculine. I don't know if that's making sense to you. The lack of the mature masculine has allowed for a society that is so far regressed into idealizing the contrasexual. So far regressed that 80 to 90% of females want 5 to 10% of men, and the rest of the 90 to 95% of men can't live with that fact. They don't see it as a lack of masculinity in their upbringing. They see it as something caused by their own ego. So they're getting ghosted. They're getting, really psychologically abused in the dating world, in the whole online world, which is a virtual world. And the assault is the big powers pushing a truth, a false truth, for the cause of this problem. So they're pushing a truth. That's the assault on truth. They're pushing a reason. They're gaslighting. Look at my other playlist. They're pushing content for, this isn't social media anymore. This is society. Society is really operating virtually, right, on a screen. So what they're pushing on social media is what they're pushing in society. And the masculinity that you see is the unhealed, immature. But they're the ones getting their message across to millions of men, millions of males. I just turned 30 last week, and I had no idea what masculinity was until 2 years ago, and I'm blessed, man. I am blessed. I'm saved. Right? I'm getting an understanding of masculinity now, just before midlife, or a good amount of time before midlife, I guess, right? Which is, according to major psychoanalytic institutes, does not occur before midlife. It just doesn't occur. It's not observable. It occurs in men. They do get in touch with their masculinity, but not consciously. So I want to make a video on, what we studied about the two, the process of initiation into masculinity, from the primal masculine to the divine masculine. What this channel was originally intended for. I know it's nothing yet. I know. It doesn't really... It's irrational for me to really try and control, what's transpersonal to me. I can do things, physically. I can lie to the truth and, create these thumbnails and start a podcast with these, superficial influences. I mean, I have a good network. I can really reach out. I can, hire an expert in the latest SEO keyword search on YouTube and really put some targeting towards this and really study the algorithm. I'm not saying, a million views next week, but my effort is so minimal in telling the algorithm that these videos will, saying something that I don't actually believe in, right? Or even if I do believe in it, if I don't believe that it's the ultimate truth, just because I believe it, doesn't mean now I believe that it's ultimate truth. I don't know whether it's ultimate truth. But I won't go down that path. That is the path. That is to go down that path is to join the assault, to join the attack on truth, the true attack on masculinity, the true attack. I know it sounds superficial. I sound like fucking, I sound like Casey Zander, Dial song on my other playlist, or any other Manosphere fucking channel. Or, I don't want to say Tate, because Tate is a lot deeper than these guys. Tate is, very, controversial. Seems a bit stupid sometimes, but when he's talking about the true assault on masculinity, it's the subtle one that you're not seeing. What attack on masculinity are you seeing? You're seeing the algorithm flood with Manosphere, right? It's like the number one trend, 2026, 2025, right? On everything. He's talking about, the big power, the macro. When the algorithm is pushing Manosphere, the algorithm is pushing false masculinity. And the influencers, these bozos, these shadow charlatans, I call them charlatans because the psychologists, coaches, life coaches, psychiatrists, behavioral therapists, influencers, psychology experts, they're fucking charlatans, man. So, if they're they're claiming that they've realized what the masculinity is, and they say this is the problem. The problem is, how you approach women. The problem is, semen retention. You got to hold your seed, right? Now, there's a lot of influences, spiritual guys that I love. I love their spiritual practice of semen retention and their maturity. They have divine masculine. But then there's the SR bros. You know the SR bros. You know what I mean? Automatically going to become better at dating. So that's the goal. The goal is to understand women better. That's their goal of masculinity. The goal is more discipline, right? More, obviously, more financial independence, right? In a toxic way, though. In a toxic way, because it's all about, to these shadow influences, these shadow masculine influences, it's all about how you earn, not how much. Sorry, it's about, the kind of business, the entrepreneurs, you know what I mean? And they attach it to their masculinity in a toxic way. I've spoken about, on my channel, attaching my entrepreneurship to my masculinity because I believe it's the divine masculine nature to be completely free, 100%. You cannot relate to a king, to a divine being, without feeling freedom, without feeling free. How are you going to relate to someone or something that you don't share the same feeling with? Like, how are you going to be empathetic to them? You know what I mean? If you're identifying with them, you're identifying with that king, and then you don't feel free, you're going to have a crisis. That's a crisis, my friend. That is an existential crisis. That's depression. You know what depression is? You've identified as the divine, and while being the divine, she ghosts you. How could she ghost your identity as the divine? Think about it. You're the divine. You are, your mum's golden child, whom she's very proud of and pleased with. And you can't approach a female because of your anxiety. Or you can't even speak about marriage or a relationship because of your anxiety. Because whatever happens in that relationship, it ends. Something happens. It's because of your identity, because the divine is in control of everything. She gets bored, that's on you. She disrespects you, that's your fault. And you rage at her. You blame her. And you think that's the masculine. The assault is dominating. It's in our cities, it's in our homes, it's in our family. I'm seeing it in my own family all the time. And I say that now that I'm seeing it in my family now because I didn't see it before. I'm seeing the assault on truth in my immediate family. All families around. But I'm seeing how it's playing out in my family, how it's affecting my family, There's rage, there's pain, there's neglect. in my culture, the men don't really value anything other than their own pride and image, right? Other than the ego. They don't value the masculinity in their own lives, nor the femininity. So they abuse both. They abuse the masculine out of the daughter, and they abuse the feminine out of the son. And it's a crisis, man. I always knew that there was trauma and pain in families and there was problems with the culture, but now being so psychologically aware to how it's affecting the family, it makes me angry. I felt anger seeing a sibling suffering and his parents not being able to help in a way that's effective, nor really genuinely being able to be sympathetic or empathetic or care. They have to be sympathetic because they've been there as well. So they're sharing the same experience. They don't just have to relate. They can share the same experience, but they choose not to. And they choose not to because they were neglected themselves. So they don't think it's necessary to help the masculine in their own families. He'll be good, he'll be alright. He's a man now. He's old enough. He'll be alright. You know? Didn't work out that way. You know, my oldest brother spent most of his 20s locked up. The rest of us somehow managed to stay out. Honestly, I don't know how. We've been really close. All of us have been really close to jail. Everyone's settled down now and getting married, kids and stuff. Which is a miracle, really. I know what I want to do with this channel. I know the message I want to get across is to wake men up to the real assault on truth, the real assault on masculinity. I don't know how to do it other than 1,000 videos, like other than 1,000 hours trying to talk about, trying to wake them up. Like, you're watching the male influencer you're watching and learning from and idealizing. How are you going to be able to tell whether this person is psychologically healed? How? What observations can you make using, what psychological principles can you use to determine whether this is a mature masculine? How mature do you think they are when they're telling you that, the problem is this girl is a narcissist, and the problem is not your deep feminine contrasexual issues, deep psychological issues that attracted the narcissist in the first place, that found the narcissist attractive, right? The sadistic, masochistic part of your unconscious. There is a masochistic part of your personality that will sacrifice. Why is it masochistic? You think it's dramatic, you think it's just words, you think, oh, look at, what are they called? What are these trendy words called? What are those words? Those terms, those trendy terms. friend said it to me the other day. Those catchy words that people say, I can't remember, like a phrase, like a catchy word that's going around. You know, I'm sure you think that because they're psychological words, and by the time you hear them, you've already heard them 1,000 times on TikTok. Why is your ego masochistic? Because it's sacrificing beyond what it can bear, man. The sacrifice is necessary for your maturity. It's not just important, it's not just healthy, it's necessary. You cannot mature as a man without integrating conscious sacrifice. But when you're willing to sacrifice, you know, your own maturity, your own progression, for the sake of another individual, for the sake of a transpersonal cause, right? A transpersonal commitment, where does it become masochistic? Where does it become self-abuse, man? You know, the sacrifice switch is turned on in your subconscious. You don't have access to it. So it's on a rampage. It's on automatic mode. It can't stop. It's sacrificing everything for something greater than your own ego, like another female. It's masochism. What's the problem? Why? Why can't you find a girl attractive who just shows you enough attention, who you can tell is just being herself, even if she sounds stupid sometimes? Why can't you find it attractive? Why are you still finding it attractive? Or why do you still feel attracted to the one who disrespects you, who doesn't acknowledge your value? When you first meet each other and you realize this, then it's on her to be her true self, okay? Now, if you've gathered that and you've, by whatever, how many dates, I honestly don't know how dating works, honestly. But, like, if you gather that by some time period, now the problem is with you, that you're staying. But the problem is much deeper than you think, because you probably already know that you're the problem, that you can't get out of this person that's not acknowledging you, right? You know you're the problem, but what is the problem inside? Where did it come from? Why is it there? Why did you attract, with your behavior, a bipolar, compulsive narcissist to begin with? Do you understand the true assault on truth? Because you'll go to YouTube, you go to a friend or someone that got dealt with the same archetypal feminine, and he'll give you a dating script, and he'll give you texting strategies, you know, which is don't even text them. Don't text them, don't message, you know. Like, look at Casey Xander, the one I put up, the playlist. I think there's still one I have to edit, actually. Put that up. It got from like texting strategies to like, you know, lack of texting, dryness, coldness, and then and then it's, you know, put up a thumbnail, stop texting. Stop messaging altogether, right? Why? It's not a bad form of communication. I used to really not understand it. I used to blame the texting. And I used to tell them, you know what I mean, I haven't dated since I was back in my other apartment last year, right? 7 or 8 months. But I used to say early on, like, it's common, not everyone really likes texting, as a way of communication. But I used to really say, like, I hate the texting and I hate the dynamic and all of that, even with anyone, with family, with friends, anyone, right? But then I realized there's nothing wrong with that form of communication. Okay, we're adapted to it. Yeah, 99% of human history, we never had it. But now we have it. And it's in our nature to really adjust. We can adjust to the time adjustment, right? Okay, it's not natural for us, but we can adjust and make it natural for us. All right? We can't do that with everything. You know what I mean? Don't get carried away here. But it's not a bad way of communication. It's a very dangerous, I think it's a very dangerous way. It could be a very harmful and hazardous way of communicating because the mass of immaturity, that's our fault. Otherwise, you're texting a normal, mature human being, then it's a very convenient method of communication. It's not the problem. Instagram isn't the problem. It's a huge fucking problem, man. I love Kanye. Instagram got your bitch. He's a modern day. He's a modern day Nietzsche, Kanye is a modern day Nietzsche, his philosophy, don't get me started on Kanye. He's saying it's true. Instagram got your bitch. He's like, she's gonna send it to the gram, before she sent it to you, right? Think subconsciously, think archetypally, what he's saying. Instagram is carrying a projection that is necessary to have on a male, and the male has to have a necessary projection on the female, and they have to both be aware of those projections and carry them in healthy ways. But now, most of our lives we had culture substituting, right, and being the carrier of that projection. Now it's social media, okay? Instagram is carrying that projection, so it's a massive problem. But who allowed it to happen? That's the problem. Who's allowing it to happen? Who's allowing it to happen by the lack of education? You know what I mean? Not fucking formal college education. I'm talking about maturity, culture. Who's educating the boys in the culture about their unconscious projection to the feminine, and how hard it is, how almost impossible it is to integrate that in your personality, but how necessary it is for your fucking survival, to attract a mate to survive with. Good luck to us, and we'll talk about it more. Talk about it like this.